Good morning. We've already had a great morning, and we have an incredible panel here. I want to thank you all for coming to our Good Jobs, Green Jobs West Regional Conference, and it's so exciting to see so many people from all different walks of life, from workers in the green economy, those training our current and future workers, policymakers on every level, union members and leaders, and people who have dedicated their lives to protecting our environment gathered here today. I'm here as the co-chair of Jobs 21, a national initiative coordinated by the BlueGreen Alliance that's focused on keeping and creating good jobs in the 21st century economy. And as Phil said, it's the job plan for the 99% of us. Jobs 21 focuses on the building and expanding the industries of the 21st century: renewable energy, energy efficiency, manufacturing, transportation, green chemicals and products, smart grid, broadband internet, and recycling. By focusing on these green energy industries and with the incredible potential to create and sustain good green jobs, we can ensure that America can compete with China, Europe, and the rest of the world. Securing our future in the 21st century as a leader of the clean energy economy, our plan is to keep America number one. These are jobs that will provide an economic foundation for our children and their children to build upon. They are the jobs that will be better for the environment. They are the jobs that will help us achieve true energy security. There's a component to these jobs that's important that we must remember. They must be, and they will be, good jobs if we implement the right strategies and policies. A good job provides fair wages and benefits for workers. A good job is safer for workers and the communities around their workplaces. A good job protects American rights of workers to organize and to speak out when there are wrongs that need to be righted. A good job is a middle-class job. Building a better economy, an economy that rewards innovation and hard work, means that the jobs we create greening our country need to be good jobs. Now, around our country, there are efforts to limit or prohibit collective bargaining and other politically motivated attacks on basic American workers' rights. These are not new efforts, but they're part of the same fight that has had working people on the defense for generations, and they are part of a fight that has to stop. No worker should lose their right to a safe workplace and fair pay and benefits. No family should lose their right to a strong community. No company should be unaccountable to its workforce and its duty to make right those things that are unsafe or dangerous. These are the efforts that those who want us to lose and slow down our movement want us to be fighting over and over again. These efforts give us false choices. Sometimes they say we have to choose between jobs and the environment. Other times it's a choice between jobs and strong rights for working people. And as we've already heard this morning, both these choices are wrong. We must and can have both good jobs and green jobs. Good green jobs help us build a better future. Good green jobs will help ensure our communities and our workplaces are safe and healthy. Good green jobs will give future generations an opportunity for prosperity. Good green jobs will ensure we live up to our promise to leave the world a better place for those who come after us. And good green jobs are what we need as a country to lead the 21st century economy. Now, today and tomorrow, we'll be sharing stories with people from all over the West and our country about building on the green economy. Listen to these stories, share your own stories, build new coalitions, make new friends, and together we can and will win the fight for good green jobs in the 21st century, securing our country's and our families' future. Now, as we're moving over now, I'm really excited about our panel this morning. And I think my microphone is still working. Isn't that amazing? Technology just works. Let's say thank you for the sound people.
All right, yeah.
Now, we have got incredible experts here, and if you all are anything like me, you could probably talk really fast, but I think what we're going to do is try to make sure we're organizing our thoughts to make sure we can hear as many things as possible. And if you're interested in hearing more, we've got another workshop at 1:30. Now, to achieve any goal, you have to have a plan. Now, Phil alluded to some people's plan. It's like for the top 400 families, maybe, people in the country. We really are about the 99%. Now, we're going to be hearing about how environmental groups, labor, public sector to industry, how we're moving forward to create good, clean energy jobs. And the world isn't going to wait for us, so we need to get moving now. So I'm going to introduce our panelists, and then we'll get on to it. Mary Nichols is the chair of the California Air Resources Board. She's devoted her entire career in the public and nonprofit service to advocating for the environment and public health. She served as an assistant administrator for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Air and Radiation Program under President Clinton, and from 1999 to 2003, and a director of the Institute of the Environment at the University of California, Los Angeles. Her priorities as chair include moving ahead on the state's landmark climate change program, AB 32, steering the board through numerous efforts to curb diesel pollution at ports, and continuing to pass regulations aimed at providing cleaner air for Southern California and San Joaquin Valley. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you.
Art Pulaski is the Executive Secretary-Treasurer, who we obviously got to hear a little bit from the California Labor Federation. Under his leadership, the Federation's achievements, among many other political and legislative victories for working people, have included pioneering high-road job training for the renewable energy, transportation, hospitality, service, manufacturing, and construction sectors with funding from the Employment Training Panel, the Department of Labor, and the Department of Energy. Welcome, Art. The Los Angeles Department of Water and Power is the largest municipal utility in the country, serving over 4 million residents. Now, Ron Nichols is the general manager of the LADWP. Lots of letters. He became the general manager in January of 2011. He's applied his 35 years of experience in the electric and water utility industry to help guide the major transformation that they're undergoing and moving to more strategic and sustainable water and power supplies to meet the needs of the over 4 million residents, businesses, and governmental organizations in Los Angeles. Please welcome Ron. David Allen is Principal and Vice President of McKinstry, a national construction, engineering, and facility services firm based in Seattle. With sales in $500 million range, McKinstry is a market leader in the integrated delivery of mechanical, electrical, and data infrastructure systems, and offers extensive facility management and energy-related services. As McKinstry's Executive Vice President, Allen is responsible for the board's brand development, including strategic positioning, overseeing business development, and community relations and client service activities. Welcome, David. And as you may guess, we could be here talking about this all day, but just to get us started, we're going to make sure if each of you, I want to ask a broad question for each of you to respond to, and then we'll get into some specifics. So what I'd like you to do is to talk a little bit broadly about the drivers, the smart policies, investments that you think we need to be moving to the cleaner, the greener jobs of the 21st century. Mary, why don't we start with you?
Well, I come from the anti-pollution side of this issue, obviously, and I believe that without some fundamental regulatory fairness, you don't get the investments that we need in clean energy and clean jobs. So I guess what I would like to say is that you often hear the attacks on regulations and regulators, but we know that the backdrop for what happened at the Port of Los Angeles, this wonderful success story that we heard about, is that with the leadership of the mayor and his appointees at the port, and then the coalition that came together, we had standards in place, and they were challenged in court, but we prevailed on basic requirements for public health and for emissions of trucks at the ports. So it took a legal requirement that said trucks are not going to be allowed to operate at the port unless they meet the certain air quality standards to actually liberate the investment, generate the action that then in turn got us to the wonderful progress that we've made in cleaning up our ports. So I think that it's important to remember that we have to stay the course on things like the 33% renewable mandate that's now been adopted as law. These are things that we need not just as goals or to make us feel good, but because if you don't have that standard out there that's keeping people's eyes on the prize with some legal muscle behind it, you just don't get the investment that we need.
No, that makes a lot of sense. David, your thoughts?
Well, I'm the businessman here, and I love our building craft union brothers and sisters, so I want to get that off my chest.
Right
first.
on.
All right.
We employ more than 1,000 skilled craftspeople in 8 or 9 crafts and 40 collective bargaining agreements around the country, and we have not found a problem with those people ready and able and trained to take on the Green Job Challenge at all. And we're doing $500 million a year with them. I think the key driver to me is that, kind of be short here because the mayor kind of tagged it, is that, hey, it takes a community. Sustainability and green jobs is about human sustainability, community sustainability. So it's going to take business people, policy people, water people, all kinds of people to get together, labor unions, financial institutions, to agree that, hey, listen, we have a really big problem, and it's not pretend. There's not enough water. There's not enough cleanliness in our air. We're using way too much power through coal and fossil fuels. We're driving cars too much. It's not a question of, golly, let's go back and decide if we have a problem. I would say that my key driver to close would be that we need to get on with it. We need business, private enterprise people to speak up and say, listen, it's not okay for someone working in recycling not to be paid right and have benefits. It's not right for truck drivers in the port of Seattle. They're doing green jobs. It's an ecosystem. Most jobs in McKinstry, all our 2,000 people, are green jobs. It's the way you look at it. So I think policy, working together, because I think the workforce kicks ass in this country already.
That's true. I think that's a technical term, too. Ron, you want to talk?
Yes, Tarryl, I think obviously regulation tends to be, everybody looks and say, well, regulation is a big driver towards going to a cleaner environment, cleaner technology applications. And it's a nudge. But to me, it can't be just based on regulation. Regulation gets our attention to something. It brings everybody around and say, maybe there's something here about this that we need to deal with. No, there'll be others who push back on it and say, I don't want to do that, you're forcing me into a corner. But the reality in terms of getting into creating good green jobs and going green isn't just to go green. Yeah. It's going green to create something that makes long-term sense for the economy, for our jobs, and for the environment. And it's exactly the type of thing we're trying to do at LA Department of Water and Power. We'll talk more about it as we get into it a little bit to the extent that we have time. But the reality is, when we start looking at the types of things that we're investing in, and we're investing billions every single year in making a huge transformation. It's not doing it just because, well, gee, that sounds like the right thing to do for the environment. That's clear and important driver. We're not doing it just because the Air Resources Board is saying you have to. It's because this is something that's going to ultimately save our customers money, put us on a path that we know that we can afford everything that we're doing in the way of water and power for decades and generations to come, and do so in a way that sustains the environment in a way that's win-win. And we do that at the same time, we're going to be able to create jobs, not where we're importing water from other parts of the West, not where we're creating power from other sources outside our state, but creating jobs long-term, not flash-in-the-pan jobs, but sustained jobs right here in Los Angeles. So it's a big opportunity for us.
So you made me think of, before we turn to Art, of my mother-in-law who loves Triple Coupon Day. Anybody do triple coupons? It's the day, you get 3 times the value, and she specifically likes it when she's able to get paid for what it is she's going to purchase. And in many ways, what you're talking about is really we're able to be creating the good jobs, protecting our environment for the future, but we also can really be helping bring down costs and make us competitive. It's a good business decision, as David was referring to. Now, Art, you work on a number of these things very broadly. What are some of the drivers that you would add to this?
Well, let me say first that I think I agree with everything that everybody said. And I think that Carl Pope, who I saw yesterday, he's not here today, is he? Carl, oh good, I hope I paraphrase you adequately. But Carl Pope said it the best, and he said you can't have an environmentally sustainable economy without economically sustainable jobs. Is that adequate, Carl? He really said it well. And so we need to think about high road economy, high road jobs, and that's the term of art for us, high road. It necessarily means an engagement, participation by the workforce with management. And that's so crucial to be able to get the feedback from workers, but also to be able to be sure that the workers have a voice on the job. I think another important thing is how do we find the investment resources to really do this greening of our economy? And we struggle for that. For example, we really want to get high-speed rail in California, and it's going up and down, right? And it's now become a $94 billion project. We've collected so far, about $19 billion for this, $18 billion for this. So it's a real struggle for us to come up with the resources. So it's, I think, useful for us to talk about how we come up with the investments from as many resources as possible in order for us to really advance this green economy. And I must say, Antonio Villaraigosa has really done, now that he's gone, we can say this honestly, he's really done an amazing job rebuilding the economy in Los Angeles to be a green economy. And I think in many ways it's a model for us to follow in other places around the country.
That's great. Well, and actually we're going to have got something kind of specifically for each of you. And Art, you talked a little bit about some of the drivers, but as we're moving forward, how do you think we can be making sure that green jobs are actually good jobs, and what kind of preparation are people needing so that we make sure we got that prepared workforce in place?
The first thing I'd say about that is that we acknowledge that green jobs are not new jobs. Green jobs are existing jobs that require some new training. And union joint apprenticeship training programs, JATCs, are really, I think, the best model for anywhere in the world in terms of how you prepare a workforce to take on new tasks. And for example, in California, let me just say that we have, primarily in the construction trades, but not just in the construction trades, we have 250 JATCs, apprenticeship programs. We spend on an average between $6,000 and $7,000 per apprentice per year training them. Unions spend about $200 million a year in California in that workforce preparation. The wonderful thing about JATCs is it's a labor management partnership. When you have that kind of partnership, you have management so crucially identifying what the needs of the workforce will be in coming years, and the union providing the practitioners who are actually doing the training for the young new apprentices. And there are a number of ways that we also come up with funding for preparation for the workforce. And maybe we can get into that a little bit in detail in a little while. But we need to build these partnerships to be sure that the training happens in the best, most efficient way, most cooperative way. And for example, in California, we use the Employment Training Panel, which collects a little bit of money from each private sector employer for incumbent worker training. And so we work with them to provide grants for various incumbent worker trainings. Like, for example, we put together a training program with the JATCs and the ETP for several transit agencies in California, including one in LA, where we trained 1,000 mechanics in mass transit to redo the buses and to be able to work on buses that have been converted to green buses. So that's just one example of how we work cooperatively with management, with state programs to collect the resources to be sure the workforce is well prepared, well trained, and doing the best job, most effective, most productive job.
So really preparing for and retooling people's skills that they've had so that we can
Absolutely.
have those jobs in the future. And actually, it's going to move us to Mary. I mean, as we're talking about implementing AB 32 and really looking at how we can be creating good jobs as we're doing this, it kind of makes me think about those 7 million jobs our country lost in just the 2 years of the recession, and China trying to get way ahead of us on kind of winning this race on the clean energy economy. What are your thoughts as you're urging smart implementation about how we can really utilize this as a way to be a catalyst for jobs?
You know, I think just as we've been talking here today about how to not be divided between advocates for the environment and advocates for working people, we need to also figure out how to not get divided between our concern for air pollution, which has been part of California's life for 40 years now, where we've been ahead of the country in terms of pushing for cleaner vehicles and cleaner fuels in order to protect our communities and to achieve a healthier quality of air. We can't let that then become at war with our goals to also lead not just in the country but in the world on climate change. We are very, very fortunate in this state that we have political leaders like Mayor Villaraigosa and like Governor Brown who aren't afraid to utter the word climate change or to talk about how what we're doing here in terms of investing in our own state's economy also positions us to be a player on the world stage. We can be collaborative, but we can also be competing with China very directly in terms of our investments in clean energy. But if we make the clean energy or green jobs only about renewables or only about things that we're selling, if you will, in order to deal with this global crisis and forget about what's going on at home when it comes to the health of the direct communities that are affected, like the people around the Port of Los Angeles, who were the ones who were feeling the effects directly of the dirty old trucks, or like the people who get most of the pollution, who are the drivers of those trucks, then we will lose momentum, and I think we risk sort of being positioned as just being kind of, maybe a little bit of a boutique kind of concern. Why are these Californians out there worrying about green energy and global climate change? Those are kind of distant issues. That's not stuff that is really day to day. And I think, frankly, we are being once again targeted by some in the industry, the Western States Petroleum Association, the Chamber of Commerce, and so forth, that are trying to build up a grassroots campaign to say California can't afford to do anything about global climate change. Well, I don't care how you feel about global climate change, but the reality is that the things that we are trying to do to address this problem in terms of shifting investments into cleaner energy sources are things that we're doing for ourselves and for our kids. So we got to keep these issues together.
Definitely, and ironically, as part of that, I was thinking about the story of Samsung. For those of you who haven't heard this, a South Korean amazing company who's had a lot of investment from certainly the country, but China and others are looking to them now, and in part, what they're looking at now is a $10 billion investment $20 billion investment over the next 10 years in just a few areas, and part of them have to do with solar panels, LED, et cetera, because of things like AB 32, because of RESs, because of policies, seeing that because there will be a market, that there's some certainty they should be investing to bring down the cost. Well, what you're talking about in part two is we can be the ones right here creating those jobs and that innovation. So I want to move to you, David, about kind of, I hate to call it the low-hanging fruit, and then we're going to move to Ron for something might be some might perceive a little bit more challenging. Energy efficiency often is perceived that way. But, I get asked questions all the time, whether it's in Minnesota or throughout the country, about how are we really spurring retrofitting or the greening of buildings, whether it's commercial, industrial, private homes, frankly, green schools, public buildings, among other things. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I guess the low-hanging fruit. I want to just make something really clear to this audience that there's a segment of work in clean tech, in climate change and saving the planet. There's all the cool new technology that has a 30, 40-year bridge to get to. And we need to get there. We talked about transportation, 30-year funding. You talk about adapting electric vehicles. I'll just tell you this. McKinstry Company started off as a plumbing and heating company in 1960. We've added sheet metal, we added engineering, we added electrical, we run data centers for Facebook and Yahoo and eBay and Microsoft. We design and build. Think of this. McKinstry Company in 2010 had jobs using our skilled craftspeople doing woody biomass boilers in the Midwest, taking schools off oil, creating jobs for unemployed loggers, and a supply chain for the chipped wood as a energy efficiency, lower emission. We're doing geothermal waste energy. My brother and I took over a tire recycling plant where we built it, modular, shipped it, installed it. We're now burning tires down to their base elements. Lisa Jackson, EPA, visited us. McKinstry Plumbing, the EPA director, is coming to our office going, thank you. I'm going, really? But we're doing conservation. We're putting hydrostatic turbines underneath waterfalls and waste treatment plants that generates the power for the plant so they don't even have to buy electricity. So my point is, there's all this now technology out there that's with a workforce standing on the sideline in Adidas strapped up tennis shoes, fully trained and ready to go. So we need, what you're talking about, I see very clearly, is taking the eye on the big picture. We're missing incremental improvements in waste and pollution and energy consumption. And we need to get that awareness out to people so that every building owner, every industrial company that has really too high of water use processes or too much power or inefficient or whether the assembly line's not set up correctly, we need to get the business community to think of it in those terms. I will say this. Another thing you maybe think of is corporate America has got to admit they're wrong at least a third of the time.
And if you want to know more about that, come talk to us after we get done with this panel, unless we have time. So, Rod, I think that's a good tee-off for you. I mean, water availability, our water infrastructure needs are really huge. A huge, huge challenge, certainly for rural communities, for the West, certainly even for the Midwest as well as the East. How can we meet our water needs and ensure good jobs are created as we are building this infrastructure in a smart way?
Well, we really got a great opportunity here in Los Angeles to show the way on that, and there's just a circumstance that's happened right now that I think sheds a light on that in an incredible way. We rely right now in Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles, about half of our water is imported water. That's water that comes from projects up in Northern California. There's environmental issues associated with that. There's water that comes in from the Colorado River, and that's half of our water. It's also our most expensive water. And it's also the water that in dry times goes away, over which we have no control. And we're experiencing that in an extreme way right now. Last year, we had one of the wettest years in history in California, recorded history. We're over 150% of average. Fantastic. As a result, we used, instead of that half of that imported water, we only used 30% imported water. Saved us a bundle because we were able to use other sources because we had snow melt and water here close to home. Fast forward to this winter, right close to the lowest water year ever. We're going to use 60% of imported water now this year because we don't have it. That's not a sustainable situation to be in. And it's going to greatly increase, for the year, our cost of water. So what should we be doing and what are we doing to change that? We have a plan. It is a 20-year plan. These are things, as David mentioned, these aren't things there's one big silver bullet. This is lots of little things that you do, but you do them here locally. We do more conservation. Most people don't realize that Los Angeles uses less water per capita than any of the cities over 1 million people in the United States. We've done a lot, but we can do a lot more with that. There are jobs that come with that in terms of things like turf removal, better utilization of our irrigation systems, technology, simple and complex, all of which create jobs. There's a matter of doing stormwater capture that when it rains, instead of having it run out the LA River to the ocean, we capture that, put it into the groundwater. There's jobs that go with projects associated with that, both in the construction of them and the operation of them. There's recycled water programs that we can do. And all of these are little things compared to the mega projects that the water world was accustomed to right now. And it's not a flash in the pan. This is something that we get to a point where we're going to, in the next 20 years, cut in half our reliance on that imported water. And we're going to do it by creating sustainable water here that doesn't have environmental effects that some of that imported water does, and it creates jobs, not a flash in the pan jobs, but long-term continued jobs here in Los Angeles. I'm excited about it. It's a big opportunity that I think we can do, and I think we can show the way of how we can have a more sustainable water future.
It's really exciting. It is exciting, and it actually, I've noticed I'm getting the cue that we've got a few more minutes, but I think it's a good time to be thinking about, and you may have already started our good transition here, especially as people are going out through the next couple days and then going back into their communities. There is so much exciting efforts and initiatives happening in the West. If there's kind of one takeaway or one best practice that you can think of, and I know you can all think of many, so I should say the one, A1, because that's not fair. Otherwise, you're going to get calls, each of you, about why you didn't say something else. That we can be moving forward, whether it's locally or certainly nationally, that helps us with growing good, sustainable jobs that are really going to help our communities. David, do you want to start?
Yeah, what I would say, there's just an example. There's 80 billion square feet of non-residential buildings in the United States. They consume about 70% of electricity. They generate 40% of the carbon. And the weirdest number is 50% of it is estimated to be wasted. So 50% of 70% of electricity and 40% of the carbon is on the table to go get. So my takeaway is get in your communities, get in people's faces, reduce waste, embrace programs that incent owners to lower their utility bills, to lower their water use. We do a lot of water use. And going back to the point from the speakers, let's get together. I'm a businessman. Why should you and I be on different pages? We're on the same page.
Excellent. Mary?
I guess I would say it takes money, and there has to be some public sector investment as well as what we want the private sector to do. We can sometimes push and prod through the regulatory process or through taxes, but we also need some additional programs that provide incentives to allow people to make change. We were able, through bond acts that the people voted on, to provide grants and loans for truckers to shift to cleaner, newer trucks, which was a benefit to everybody. Measure R that the mayor spoke about, people of Los Angeles actually put in a sales tax surcharge for transit. We've got to talk about the money, and we've got to look for creative ways that we can generate the funds and then put them back into making the change happen. Putting a price on carbon, which is what AB 32 did for the first time, said if you're going to be emitting this stuff into the atmosphere, you've got to pay a price for it, and that money then gets plowed back into reducing carbon equals investments in energy efficiency. We will have more funds to spend on that, and that's what we're going to have to do.
So in part, telling the taxpayers what they're going to get for their money and then
Yes.
showing them what they're doing and how that
Exactly.
makes a difference. That's great. Rod?
I think it comes down to a lot around education and better awareness. And I'm using one specific example in that. LA was able to get funds from the ARA funding, American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, for weatherization, about $10 million. And we used that to create and implement a new class, utility pre-craft trainee of people that we brought off the streets who didn't have a job, who didn't have any classical training of any sort whatsoever, and brought them in to use that fund to get trained to do weatherization of homes. and we established a program around it. We created a means that they can get out there and learn on the job, and then at the same time working to say that's only going to be, it's an 18-month program that's funded by the federal government. Work that to then make them aware, again, making them aware of what are the job opportunities that you could have within the Department of Water and Power to get into, or civil service, to get in through, become a member of the IBEW, and get a career and not just a short term. So making them aware of that was outreach that these jobs are out there. The money, as Mary indicated, to do that. And we wanted to make certain that we did that. This isn't just money that is 18 months and it's gone, the program dies, because that would be a huge failure. So we have, and this is where we made it clear to our customers now, who are now going to be paying to continue that program on, so we aren't relying on federal money. So it was awareness and outreach to our customers that these are the types of jobs and opportunities that's going to save you money, it's going to save our utility money long term, and it's going to create more and more of these types of jobs. Making people aware of what the opportunities are, and that investing in this makes sense, and that there's win-win out of it, something we need to be able to do more of.
Great. And Art, you get the last word.
You know, Tarryl, something strikes me as we talk about this that we haven't addressed, and that is that I come from the Bay Area, and every day or every other day cross the Bay Bridge, and they're building the new Bay Bridge. And they're building the new Bay Bridge, a lot of it with steel from China. It's really a remarkable thing that's happening, but they claim that we don't have the facilities to be able to create that kind of steel. And so we have to be looking, I think, long term. Another very interesting thing that I learned not long ago was when I was talking to some longshoremen. They were saying that, you know, all those containers for all those imports we have coming in from China in the east, we import products, but what's going back out in those containers very often is scrap. We're not exporting anything in many of those containers except scrap. So the question is, how do we think about, and all of that transportation, as we all know, every one of us in this room, is a carbon challenge to us when we bring those things back over and then send scrap back. And so how do we think about actually bringing some of that work back? And for example, high-speed rail. Are we going to bring high-speed rail trains and high-speed rail rails from China or somewhere else? We're going to think of a way to build that locally and save some of the carbon. And so I think, so we have to, so we really have to work. There are, for example, ways that we can build in policy, in legislation, bid preferences, so that there's a slight advantage. Now, we have to do with free trade limitations on that, of course, and the legal problems with that. But how we build, how we prepare, how we plan ahead, and how we perhaps include bid preferences in terms of giving a little bit of an advantage to the manufacture of those things locally. And I think in the long haul, it will save us carbon and it will save us jobs.
And our trains will stay on the track.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, what an incredible panel we've had here today. If you're interested in knowing more, be thinking about this as you're going through your workshops and as you're talking with each other. Feel free to join us at 1:30 today. I mean, part of what we're hearing right now is that, let's face it, in our country, we've got the ingenuity, we've got the workforce, we have got the hard work ethic, and we have the ability to bring people together to create these jobs, good sustainable jobs here and now. We just have to make it happen. So thanks so much, and I think Yvette's got a few comments for us. Please thank our panel again.